Hello and welcome back to Brooklyn Junction Model Railway. We've not done any videoing for a good couple of 3 weeks now, but we've been busy elsewhere. As you can see from the previous shot, the coach sidings are now all down, nailed into place, all the point work is in, point motors and all the LEDs for the indications are all in and wired up. You'll have to excuse the mess for the rest of it, but we've now progressed to bring the track. This is going to be our bridge at a later date, but it was important to get this track in here and this point that goes in to the coach sidings. Then from here we are coming down here into double track into the station, or into the start of the station where we'll split into 4 track. So we'll have 2 platforms, 2 running straight through. So what we've done at the moment is laid out the points to where we want them. These are our homemade point motors. We'll do a tutorial on those and how they're controlled at some point. So yes, the next thing to do is to position the points, get them lined up with our existing point and track, but we've got to there's a brace under this baseboard. That's why we've got a bit of a gap between these 2 points here. Once these points and we've got to cork that, so once we've done that we can put the points in, power them up, put droppers from each frog and outside rail down through and connect to our power bus, which is or will be underneath. There's a bit of video or photo of the underside of the coach sidings, which just looks a right mess under there of wiring, but when you know what you're doing and you've done it, then it's quite easy, trust me.
So as you can see, I've got all the points pinned in and the droppers down and servo motors mounted for the staging yard for the coaches. Took a bit of time and some careful drilling for the dropper holes, but eventually got it to make it all line up, and the servos now operate the points in both directions, which is good. So the next thing I'll show you, if I disconnect this, is if we flip the board up, you can see how we have the point motors mounted. So if I acquire a pointing device, look at this end, you'll see I've wired the points in. So the red, black and green droppers from the points on the surface, red and black being front and back power feeds, and then the green one to switch the polarity on the frog. The 3 core cables coming out of the back of the servos will then go off to servo control boards, which will show at another point, and then all it's left to do is put the bus wire in, put the droppers down for the rest of the track feeds, and then hopefully we should be able to get the Arduino bashed in and run some tests.
So what really held us up was the fact that once the points were down for the coach siding, we realised we had no way of controlling them straight away, which brought us on to building our mimic board, showing all the coach sidings down here, but we had no board, so it was a case of nipping to B&Q, getting some perspex, drawing a track plan using Microsoft Publisher, and marking out all the switch positions, all the LED positions, and then lining with some good Halfords pinstriping tape. This was then given a coat of matte varnish over the top. Then what will be the turntable control is over here, so 7 tracks, water tower, entry and exit, and push button to select which way the turntable is going to go. So this is still in progress as we need to wire these points and LEDs in to this section here, but each point switches and you get a direction indication from the LED. The control is done from an Arduino, in this case Mega. Anybody that knows about Arduino will possibly know the difference between the Mega and the Uno. The Uno just didn't have enough digital inputs, so without going to shift registers and other ways of inputting more inputs, I just went for a Mega because you've got about 50 odd inputs. So all our switch wires come down through this loom and then onto the various digital inputs. So it's all controlled from an Arduino Mega. I quickly realised that the Arduino Uno didn't have enough digital inputs for all the switches that we were likely to require. So the control comes from the Mega to these 2 servo control boards. Each board has 16 channels, so you can drive 16 servos, and this part of the layout will use all 16 probably. So this board will then be used for semaphore signalling when we get round to building, designing and utilising the same point motors for controlling the signals. The LEDs are all fed down onto our 2 bus rails, so I have a green LED rail, a red LED rail, power supply coming in separately from our power supply down here, and all switched through the switches up here. Now these switches are not controlling any of these circuits, they are operated by the servo. As it changes position, it will then release that micro switch to swap direction. As it operates, it closes. So that's what gives us our red and green operation of the LED, so that you know physically that the point has changed direction, because if the point doesn't throw enough, the LED won't light. So once we'd decided what the track plan was going to be, made the mimic board, fit the switches, LEDs, we needed something to mount them in. So finding some 2x1 wood in the garage, I knocked up this frame using a table saw, came up with a bevel angle that looked about right, fitted that all in like a picture frame, made up the box. The sides are actually from an old bed slatted arrangement, and a ply sheet in the bottom, and it all goes together quite well. All the boards are fitted on plastic standoffs, and the terminal blocks are screwed in position with some nuts and bolts. Also found an old stay that had been hanging around in the garage for something like 25 years, and job's a good one. Then we had the problem of actually supplying power. Now all the LEDs will work from between about 1.8 to 2.2 volts, but we had no way of supplying that without a lot of drop down resistors or anything. So there's been plenty of YouTube videos and tutorials about how to convert an old computer power supply into a bench top power supply, and that's exactly what this is. The case is a bashed about old computer tower case. Not my best attempt, but I'm not a metal worker, so it does the job. Power supply is mounted in the back. All the leads were chopped down short to give us two 3.3 volt outputs, two 5 volt outputs, a 12 volt, and I bought a voltage regulator from Amazon that you can change the voltage on. So by selecting the right voltage, this is another Amazon buy, volt and ammeter. You can change the voltage on this output. It's also got a couple of USB charging points in there, and an on-off switch, and the light there tells you from the computer power supply that power is available. So that took probably, I don't know, best part of a week to do all of that, fit it all up and wire it all, and there should be a couple of photos to show the inside as well, if anybody's interested. Now, if you watched one of the previous videos where we made our own track set of gauges, this one particular is 3 foot and 36 inches on the inner curve, 38 inches on the outer. We went right up to a 10-foot curve with the idea of using those to set a curve through the station for all the tracks. But as you can see, with them roughly laid out, that is far too severe a curve for our station. So although it was a good idea in theory, we actually need a lot bigger radius, so we will just eyeball it as we go through and just put a gentler curve going from one end of the station to the other.